If you're a counselor who's a Christian, then you've probably had opportunities to provide faith-based counseling. And for people whose faith make up a big part of their life, having a counselor provide spiritual counseling can feel very affirming and encouraging. However, even a seasoned counselor can fall into the trap of doing some unhelpful things when providing faith-based services. And in this video, I'm going to give you 6 things that a counselor should not do when providing faith-based services. Stay tuned. Hi, my name's Aaliyah Mullins, and welcome to Holy Spirit Inspired Counseling, where I help you put your education, training, and experience in the service of the kingdom. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about 6 things that counselors should not do when providing faith-based services. But before we get started, if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be updated when I post new videos. Now, let's get into this video, and let's start talking about the 6 things that counselors should not do when providing faith-based services. Starting at number 6. Let's go. The number 6 thing that counselors should not do when providing faith-based services is tell clients, just pray about it. Most people who are seeking faith-based services have already been praying over their issues. Some have prayed very urgently and intensely about the issues before they enter counseling. They've been seeking the Lord, and they've been doing everything they know how to do spiritually to get resolution for the challenges they're experiencing. Many believers are entering counseling as a last resort because in some ways it feels like they're not trusting God to take care of the issue if they get help. Our role as counselors is to support and encourage the people we see. We want to help them reframe the counseling experience so that they know that part of the help the Lord is giving them is coming from counseling services. That makes us a resource for them and a tool for the Lord. When a counselor says, just pray about it, in some ways it's dismissive, and it can suggest the counselor isn't putting any real clinical thought into assisting someone. It assumes the person has not been praying, and it's almost like a kind of Hail Mary statement, as if the counselor doesn't have any better sound counsel to provide. Now, if it should happen that we're stumped by an issue that comes up in the counseling room, it's better to say, let me look into that, rather than just throw out a, just pray about it, as if that's the answer they came to us for. The number 5 thing a counselor should not do when providing faith-based services is act like the ultimate authority on spiritual issues. One of the greatest benefits of conducting faith-based counseling is that we can directly apply our faith in the work we do. Our faith doesn't have to be in the background. There's more opportunity to join with people around our common belief in Jesus as a healer, a helper, a comforter, and a counselor. Now, just because someone is seeking guidance, support, and feedback doesn't mean that all their beliefs are wrong and that they don't have some good spiritual practices. We want to remember that we only know and see in part, and we have not arrived in our walk with God. We don't want to minimize or dismiss someone's faith or beliefs just because they may be struggling. So let's not pretend to be the authority on all spiritual things, but let's be a partner and a help to the people we see. The number 4 thing that counselors should not do when providing faith-based counseling is offer prayer blindly. Once again, many of the people we have seen have a strong spiritual foundation and a strong spiritual support network. They've likely been praying for themselves, and they have likely been prayed for. It's very possible that part of the reason they've come to counseling is because they're all prayed out. They've been praying, they've been believing, and they haven't seen what they've been believing for. They may be frustrated, they may be discouraged, and not in a good place to receive more prayer. And while there's nothing wrong with praying with a person who's seeking faith-based services, before we agree to pray, we want to make sure we have some understanding of the prayer history surrounding an issue. We also don't want to imply that we have the secret prayer and that our prayers will do the work that other people's prayers couldn't. A counselor who offers prayer without doing some kind of questioning to make sure they fully understand the issue can lose credibility. We want to be led by the Holy Spirit. And if he says to agree in prayer with someone, then fine. Otherwise, we want to be careful that we're not jumping in before we know how it will be received. A note to that, We may encounter people who we recognize immediately have a spiritual issue, and our first inclination may be to pray for this person, but we need to be careful. Prayer may be what someone needs, but it may also be the last thing that they want. The number 3 thing that counselors should not do when providing faith-based services is tell clients, just have faith. That comment is like a slap in the face. It's essentially telling people they haven't had faith. We want to make sure that we're using faith-based counseling as an opportunity to spiritually enlighten, uplift, and encourage. What every believer needs is support, care, and compassion. So while we may recognize where someone is operating in error or fear, and that error and fear is hindering their faith, we want to be careful how, when, and if we address it. It is very likely that we are not the last stop on anyone's faith journey. Our assignment for a particular person may just be to encourage. Let's not tell people just have faith, because it can actually be a hurtful statement to someone who's trying to believe. The number 2 thing that counselors should not do when providing faith-based services is forget to evaluate the spiritual maturity of the person they're seeing. Not everyone who wants faith-based counseling has a strong biblical foundation. Many people who want Christian counselings have beliefs about God and the Bible that are contrary to what the Bible actually says. Now, that doesn't disqualify them from being able to receive biblically based services, but it does mean that we as providers have to explore what they believe. There are believers who do not believe in healing, and as a result, their faith-based services may not include the idea that they can be healed. Now, certainly we may find opportunity to introduce that idea, but we want to be mindful that many of the beliefs people have are resistant to challenge. Other believers may have beliefs that are completely unbiblical. We want to be assessing for this so that as we encounter unexpected beliefs, our first reaction isn't to judge, chastise, or even correct, but it's to understand and to uncover where these beliefs and ideas are coming from. We want to meet people where they are, which means we don't want to go in blindly assuming that just because someone's a Christian, they believe like how we believe. We want to evaluate the spiritual beliefs and spiritual maturity of each person we see so that we can use their beliefs to facilitate healing, health, and wholeness. Remember, the Lord can use whatever people give him. And the number 1 thing that counselors should not do when providing faith-based services is substitute religious plateaus for sound clinical interventions. Just because we provide faith-based counseling does not negate the fact that we are clinical providers. As such, we want to make sure that we're using our education, training, and experience to be formulating treatment plans and developing clinical interventions for each person we see. And ideally, we want to be using evidence-based approaches. When we're prayerful about our clinical practice, then we can know that we're being led and guided by the Holy Spirit in the interventions and perspectives that we develop. That in itself could be considered faith-based counseling, because there's a lot of faith that needs to be happening behind the scenes in the care of each person we see. What we don't want to do is to believe that in order to be providing faith-based services, we need to be praying with every client or using religious plateaus like the Lord works in mysterious ways, in lieu of clinical interventions. We want to be mindful that we're not getting lost in the mystery that comes with faith-based counseling and getting away from the clinical work that needs to be happening in conjunction with the Spirit. That's it. Those are my 6 things that a counselor should not do when providing faith-based services. I hope this video has blessed you, and if you haven't, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be updated when I post new videos. God bless.